What is fever? It is not the only question here. What is fever? What causes fever? How is it treated? All these questions will be answered in this video. If we break down this term, homeo means same and stasis means standing stable. The normal temperature of the human body is expressed in 2 units Fahrenheit and Celsius. The temperature ranges between 97 Fahrenheit or 36.1 Celsius and 98.6 Fahrenheit or 37.2 Celsius, or more. The widely accepted normal temperature is 98.6 Fahrenheit or 37 Celsius. So, if the temperature of the body rises to 100 Fahrenheit or above, it is said that the person is suffering from fever. A fever is an unnatural rise in body temperature, sometimes referred to as pyrexia, typically brought on by an illness. It is also an efficient defense mechanism the body utilizes to combat infections. The normal temperature of the human body is 37 degrees Celsius and varies by about 0.5 degrees through the course of the day. This means your body temperature can vary depending on how active you are or the time of day. But if the increase is more than 0.5 degrees Celsius, then it is attributed to a fever-inducing substance called pyrogens. Fever occurs when either endogenous or exogenous pyrogens cause an elevation in the body's thermoregulatory set point. The body's temperature is regulated by the thermoregulatory center in the hypothalamus. The increase in the set point temperature is often due to a pathological process that involves the release of immunological mediators to trigger the thermoregulatory center of the hypothalamus to elevate the body's core temperature. Let's jump into some details about the thermoregulatory center and the immunological mediator that influence it to understand the physiology of fever better. The hypothalamus, which sits at the base of the brain, acts as the body's thermostat. The hypothalamic thermoregulatory center accomplishes heat production by inducing shivering and heat conservation through vasoconstriction. Due to the excess of heat production and conservation, fever develops. At an established degree, fever is regulated even at a temperature of over 41.0 degrees Celsius, and heat production approximates loss, as in health, though at a higher level of the set point. Therefore, fever does not climb up relentlessly. Let's look at the working of the hypothalamus in a bit more detail. Hypothalamus is a part of the brain that functions as a thermostat. It takes cues from heat and cold sensors throughout the body and turns on cooling or heating as necessary. It is divided into anterior and posterior parts. This is known as thermoregulation. Now the anterior hypothalamus orders the body to cool down when it becomes too hot. This is done by sending signals to the vessels to cause vasodilation so more heat can be dissipated from the body, and diaphoresis, that is sweating, which causes the body to cool down. The posterior hypothalamus, on the other hand, controls the body's ability to create and maintain heat as the temperature lowers through vasoconstriction to limit the loss of heat and stimulate the motor neuron to cause shivers that generate heat. These two mechanisms take place due to the production of norepinephrine and acetylcholine. Norepinephrine causes vasoconstriction in brown adipose tissue to boost heat generation while decreasing heat loss. Additionally, acetylcholine induces shivering in the muscles, turning chemical energy stored into heat. So now that you have an understanding of basic thermoregulatory mechanisms of the body, it will be easier to understand how fever occurs. Fever is part of an inflammatory reaction. Inflammatory cytokines are produced when immune cells recognize the presence of a pathogen. Some of these cytokines are pyrogenic, meaning they may cause fevers. In simpler words, whenever a pathogen interacts with the body, the body's immune response gets activated and cell-signaling substances such as cytokines are released. The immunological mediators, or cytokines, stimulate the hypothalamus and change the set point temperature of the body. The cytokines that can cause these changes to occur are called pyrogens. The generation of fever involves the following steps. Numerous substances from outside the body, exogenous pyrogens, initiate the fever cycle. Endotoxin of gram-negative bacteria, with their pyrogenic component lipopolysaccharide, is the most potent exogenous pyrogen. Pyrogens secreted by the cells of the immune system are called endogenous pyrogens. Fever is also a common finding, without any obvious evidence of infection, for example, hypersensitivity reaction, autoimmune diseases, and malignancy. Exogenous pyrogens initiate fever by inducing host cells, primarily macrophages, to produce and release endogenous pyrogens such as interleukin-1, which has multiple biological functions essential for the immune response. Endogenous pyrogens are transmitted to the hypothalamic thermoregulatory center, where they induce the synthesis of prostaglandins, of which PGE2 is the most important. They raise the thermostatic set point to initiate the febrile response. Prostaglandin E2, or PGE2, is the primary fever inducer and causes the hypothalamus thermoregulatory neurons to increase the body's set point temperature. In other words, PGE2 deceives the hypothalamus into believing that the body is chilly when there has been no change in temperature. The hypothalamus reacts by telling the body to manufacture heat aggressively to boost body temperature over average. Although it is a symptom of illness, it is not all that bad. Fever, sometimes seen as a negative side effect of illnesses, is an efficient defense mechanism the body utilizes to combat infections. When the body temperature rises, the body's immune response gets enhanced. So, when a patient's fever is allowed to subside naturally rather than treated with fever-reducing drugs, they often recover more quickly. This is because a higher temperature enhances the body's immune response and delays the development of most infections. So, you can say that a fever is a rise in the temperature that can be beneficial for the body. As you have seen, the normal range of the body temperature is narrow. Significant deviations from average in this tightly controlled physiological variable can quickly become life-threatening. For example, an internal body temperature of 105 degrees or more expose proteins and body fats to direct temperature stressors. This form of heat distress can threaten the integrity and function of proteins accustomed to the body's usual temperature variations and the occasional less excessive fevers. Adverse effects of fever differ in different age groups. Infants with a fever are usually irritable and may not sleep or feed well. Older children lose their interest in play. Usually, the higher a fever gets, the more irritable and disinterested children become. However, sometimes children with a high fever look surprisingly well. Children and infants require special care as they are more vulnerable to fluctuations in temperature. Children may have seizures when their temperature rises or falls rapidly, called febrile seizures. A seizure is an abnormal, unregulated electrical discharge of nerve cells in the brain or part of the brain. Febrile seizures are seizures triggered by a fever of at least 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, about 38 degrees Celsius. Febrile seizures usually result from the fever itself. Most often, the fever is caused by an otherwise minor infection, such as a viral respiratory infection or an ear infection. In such cases, the infection and the seizure are harmless. About 1/3 of children have additional febrile seizures, but usually only a few seizures. Children are more likely to have additional seizures if they were under 1 year old when they had the first febrile seizure. The same is the case for adults. Care should be taken to avoid overheating. Temperature of more than 40 degrees Celsius may result in disorientation, convulsions, and irreparable brain damage. So how is a fever treated? Drugs known as antipyretics are used to reduce the body's temperature. Antipyretics are medicines that lower fever. Antipyretics cause the hypothalamus to override a prostaglandin-induced increase in temperature. The body then works to lower the temperature, which results in a reduction in fever. The drugs most commonly used today to suppress fever are salicylates, commonly known as aspirin, ibuprofen, other non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, and derivative acetaminophen. Most commonly, aspirin and ibuprofen are used to treat fever. They restore the body's temperature set point by reducing PGE2 production. Once the infection is cleared, pyrogens are no longer produced, and the hypothalamus thermostat returns to its regular setting. So, this ends our answer to the question, what is fever? Along with a discussion of fever pathophysiology. Stay tuned to sqadia.com to watch more educational videos.
Explore our extensive library of over 1,800 video lectures to learn about a wide range of topics. Only on sqadia.com.